Hey there, I'm Riley from Gadget, and today we're going to build a full stack Shopify app. Gadget's going to handle all of Shopify's boilerplate for you, including OAuth, front-end session tokens. It's going to help you subscribe to Shopify's webhooks and provide you with a historical data sync that manages Shopify's API rate limits. Gadget also provides all the infrastructure you need for building your apps. You're going to get a production-grade Postgres database, serverless Node backend, React front-end, and we're going to make use of the built-in background job system that's exposed through an API built into Gadget. It's built on top of Temporal under the hood. We're going to build our classic product tagger application. It's our typical getting started introductory tutorial. What it's going to do is read in Shopify product data to our database. We're going to have a little UI in the Shopify admin that allows merchants to enter keywords, and if any of those entered keywords match words in the product descriptions, we just write those back to the products as tags. If you have any questions, check out our documentation or ask in our developer Discord. Let's get started. Let's get started building our full stack Shopify app with Gadget. I'm just going to be building a product tagger application. This is our introduction tutorial. It's a great way to learn about building apps for Shopify and building apps for Shopify using Gadget. To start, I am just going to go to gadget.new and create my new Gadget app. So I am going to select Shopify app. Gadget does support building public Shopify apps that can exist on Shopify's app store. I'm just going to build a custom app for a single merchant. I'll press continue and I'll give my app a name, my product tagger. I'm happy with Remix for my front end framework, matches what the Shopify CLI is using, and TypeScript. So I will press confirm and Gadget will create my new app. And what it's doing is it's rolling out a full stack infrastructure setup for me. So this is going to be a Postgres database. It's going to be a Node.js backend, serverless, and a Remix front end. So I don't need to spend any time stitching things together. Gadget's going to do it for me, and my app will be live on the internet. I'm brought here to the Gadget editor. The first thing I'm going to do is connect to Shopify. Now at this point, if I enter a description for my app when I was getting set up, it would be pasted here in the AI assistant. You can give the assistant a detailed description of your app, and it will go ahead, guide you through Shopify setup, select the data models it thinks you need, and it's a good way to accelerate and get started, especially if you don't necessarily know all the models you might need. I do know the models I need because of the tutorial, and believe it or not, I've written it before. So I'm just going to close the assistant and go through manual connection. So I'll choose a different method. I'm going to select my Riley Test Stuff Shopify organization. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and create apps in my Shopify dev dashboard. So in Shopify, if you haven't built a Shopify app before, you'll need separate apps for your development environments as well as your production environment. So at this point, Gadget can go ahead, create both my development and production apps in my dev dashboard. I'm going to go ahead and do that so I can show off deployment at the end. So let's just press continue. At this point, I'm selecting my Shopify API scopes and data models because I need to read in my product data. I'm going to read my product description and then write back tags to my product. I need my product read and write scopes. And my Shopify product data model. If I hover over that, I can see the body field is specifically what I need. That's my product description. When I selected this product data model, you'll notice that the products create, update, and delete webhooks were automatically added here. Gadget's going to subscribe to Shopify's webhooks for you, and this will keep your product data here in Gadget in your Postgres database up to date with Shopify. Gadget also comes with a historical data sync, so I'll be able to pull in all that historical product data, use webhooks to keep up to date with any additional changes, and we'll stay in sync. So that's awesome, and we won't have to worry about Shopify's rate limits. Gadget's going to handle all that for me. I'm happy with this. You can always edit this connection later if you don't know everything you need right away. This is all I need for this app, but just wanted to mention it. Let's press confirm. And at this point, I will install on one of my development stores. So test with sample data looks good. Let's press install. And this is just one of the development stores I created in my dev dashboard. Gadget does handle all of Shopify's OAuth for me. I don't need to write it myself. So let's just click install and I should see my app here in my admin. Beauty, here we go. This is my Remix front end. You can see edit this page's code directly at web routes app index. And if I go back to my gadget editor, we are successfully connected. That's great. Let's go to files. Web folder is my front end, API is my backend. We'll get to that in a minute. But if I go web, routes, and my default route here, let's edit something. Let's go hello. If I go back to my app, you see, oh, it just says, there we go, hello. So hot module reloading does work out of the box with Gadget. So building your front ends feels like you're building locally, which is pretty nice. I'm just gonna go back to my Gadget editor here, and let's start in the backend. We'll put front ends to the side for a bit. We'll come back to them at the end, but I want to start at the database level. API is my backend. Models are how you define tables in the underlying Postgres database, right? This is a visual ORM. So if I click on Shopify product, which is the model I selected during setup, click on the schema, I can see it's got all of these fields. These are like columns in my database table. I own these models, so just because Gadget populated all this for me doesn't mean I need to leave it as is. I can go ahead and add custom models. This is particularly nice if I'm storing meta field information from Shopify. I can inline all of my product meta fields alongside the actual product record. I'll just delete that for now. And speaking of deleting, I really just need the body field here. So if I want to go ahead and let's get rid of vendor, I can do that. Store less data, that's good. So I can go ahead and manipulate these models however I want. You'll see that Gadget also generated a Shopify GDPR request, shop and sync model. These are going to be created for you every time you connect to Shopify. Shop holds your shop records, of course. Sync holds records of any historical data syncs you've run. And GDPR request is good for compliance requests. This is more important for your public apps on Shopify's App Store. Now, as you go ahead and create models, whether it's through the Shopify connection or we'll create a custom model in a bit, we're also, and by we, I mean Gadget, is also generating a CRUD API for you. So that's create, read, update, delete. So if I click on got my actions folder, if I click on create, I can see that I've got a serverless node function here. And all it's doing by default is going to save my record, which is my Shopify product, if I hover over it, to my Gadget database. These are fully extensible. So you can see your logic goes here. You can go ahead and extend these actions as needed. One more thing to point out, off to the right here, the triggers section. So this is what's actually going to trigger this action run. So when a Shopify webhook comes in, or when I run that historical data sync, it could run this create code here. So that's important. Notably absent is an API request, and we're going to check that out when I create a custom model. So that's fantastic. This is kind of the basics of our Shopify connection on Gadget. All the Shopify boilerplate is handled for me. The whole idea behind Gadget is that you just focus on building and writing what's unique to your app. So speaking of that, let's create a custom data model. If I click on the plus here and just go allowed tag, boom. Just like that, database migrations are run under the hood, and I've got an allowed tag table in my app, my allowed tag model. Schema's pretty bare bones to start. We'll give you an ID, some timestamps to manage record updates and creation. I can go ahead and add custom fields. Once again, let's go keyword. So this is just where I'm going to store keywords that are entered by merchants. And this is a string type. I'm happy with that. Got support for a bunch of types, including vectors. There's file storage built into Gadget, files right here, as well as relationships. So Postgres is relational, so you can relate your data models as well. There's also some built-in validations, or I can write my own. I'm going to make keyword required. It doesn't really make sense to make an allowed tag record without a keyword, so it's going to be required. If I try and create it without that, it'll fail, or the action will fail. Speaking of my actions, once again, CRUD API generated. We've got our create, update, and delete actions here. So if I click on create, it looks pretty similar to my Shopify product create. Couple key differences. The main one I want to point out here is the triggers section. So this is now a generate an API endpoint. So the only way for me to create my allowed tags, there's obviously no webhooks for it, is to go ahead and call my action. Under the hood, everything Gadget is GraphQL. But that said, we are generating a Node API client unique to your app. And we've got some useful React hooks that help you to go ahead and you see there's a use action hook here when we pass in our API allowed tag create. That will help us run our actions in the front end in a very Reactful way. So let's go ahead and test out our action. If I click run action, opens up our API playground. API, that is our API client. Allowed tag is my model name. Create is my action name. And if I go ahead, cozy, I can see I have created a record. This has been now added to my database. So if I click on my data tab, I see that yes, cozy is there. That is great. Speaking of data, you know what? Let's go ahead and take a peek at my Shopify data. So I've got nothing right now. If I go ahead and create a new product, this is a cozy sweater. You'll notice I am reusing the word cozy because I eventually want a tag to be applied. So when I go ahead and create this product in Shopify, it fires that webhook. If I come to Gadget and refresh here, I see that, there we go. My sweater is now here in my Gadget database. We'll run a data sync at the end of this tutorial, but it just shows you that my webhooks are indeed working. So I'll just go ahead and delete this for now. Excellent. So we've got my custom data model. The CRUD API is already generated. So I just now need to add a bit of custom code to my application. And this is what is going to handle the business logic for my app. So I need to be able to, when that product data comes in, whether it's an update or a create, check to see if the product description has changed at all. If it has, I need to check my stored allowed tag records, see if there's any matches between keywords and words in the product description, and then write any new keywords or new tags back to the product. So I'm going to do that in my Shopify product data model actions, both create and update. So let's just go ahead and start with create. Now, in this tutorial, I'm just going to use this Gadget web editor to do all my building. I want to point out that we do have a CLI tool. If you click up here, it gives you some instructions for getting set up. I can run GGT, which is the name of the tool. It's going to run in the background. If I keep it running locally, any changes I make in my local IDE will be synced up to this Gadget web editor and vice versa, keeps them in sync. And that means your live project, your development environment here, you can build locally and it feels like you're building any other app. Pulling down your project locally also enables source control, which is super important. And then GGT also contains commands for things like deployment. So you can set up a CI/CD pipeline for actually deploying to production. You set up your standard, whatever that might be, Git workflow. Okay, now let's get back to the action here. I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste code. I'm going to walk through some of the gadgetisms, but the whole point is that the code is really what's unique to your app. So I don't want to spend too much time on our tag processing logic because it's kind of the standard stuff. It's not unique to Gadget. It's just logic, business logic. So what I'll need to do here, I'm going to go ahead and add a if record is, once again, if I hover over it, that's our Shopify product. And you'll see I have a changed API on here. So the record API in Gadget does have built-in change detection. And this is super useful for preventing webhook loops. So what would happen is if I get a product webhook come in, I always write back to Shopify, write tags, whether or not they changed or not. That's going to go ahead and fire another webhook. I'll update webhook, update. It'll be an endless loop. We don't want to do that. So we want to use change detection to only run our logic if the product description changed. So I can just go ahead and do body, and that is the name of my field. And then I'm going to write a little utility function. I'm going to call that apply tags, and I'm just going to copy paste a bit of code in here. We haven't written this utility yet, but I'm going to create a little util file in a minute. And this will go ahead. It's going to pass the ID, product description, and then any existing tags. I want to do this in create as well as update. So update, it's going to be almost the exact same here. Let's just go ahead, paste it in, and then I, of course, need to import apply tags. So let's go ahead and implement apply tags now. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. utils.ts. It exists within my Shopify product folder. And we can go ahead. I'm just going to copy paste a bunch of, I'm going to do some imports first because we can talk about the imports and then I'll copy paste a bunch of code. So we'll go import some of the utilities from the Gadget server. We've got a logger that's going to write to these logs over here. We have API. This is our API client. It's the same client we use to make requests in the API playground. And then we have this connections. This is going to help us write back to Shopify. It's going to have an authenticated API client I can use to send GraphQL requests to Shopify to update my tags. And this all comes from my Gadget server package. Not Gadget server, just Gadget server. And you'll notice if you look at these, they look familiar. They're also available here in your actions as part of this high context parameter. A full list of the available options in this parameter are available in our documentation. So now I'm just going to go ahead, copy, paste a bunch of code here. So this just implements our apply tags function. We're just checking to make sure there is an ID and a product description. If there is, that's great. Let's keep going. If not, I'm not going to run this function because I either have nothing to compare against. If there's no description, if there's no ID, I can't write back to Shopify. This shouldn't happen. It's just a bit of error detection. I'm using a regular expression to parse out the words in my product description and then a set just to remove any duplicates. I don't need to match words more than once. And then I'm using my API client to go ahead and read my allowed tag records. So I'm just reading the first 250. This is the max page size in a read in Gadget. If I were building a production app, I would need to go ahead and actually paginate over my records. I'm not going to worry about that right now, though. I'm just going to grab 250 to start. And then I am iterating over the returned records. So this find many, it's our read API built into Gadget. I'm going to map over the results and just get the keywords. Now, if I open my docs here, it's a good time as any to look at find many. So as you build and as you edit your data models, Gadget's going to go ahead and create API documentation for you, keep it up to date. So you see, I do have allowed tag docs, and if I want to figure out how to retrieve many allowed tag records, I have a little snippet here. API allowed tag find many. That's exactly what I'm calling. I'm just passing in the first parameter here to extend it to 50. By default, it'll only return 50 results. I'm taking my passed in tags, just putting them to a set. This is just for easier comparison. And then I'm doing my compare. So it's my saved keywords. I'm filtering those and I'm checking to see, is there a match with a word in my product description? And is it already not in my tags? So I don't need to write back if the tag already exists. I'm using the logger just to print all of this information to my Gadget logs. It'll just make it easy to debug. And then if there are keywords to apply, if there are new tags that I want to write back to my product, I go ahead. Now, seems like I've got my arrays. I don't think I need some of this logic, actually. I think I can just do this, get my keywords apply, append them to my existing tags, print out these final tags. And then you see here, I'm calling API.enqueue. So because I'm writing back to Shopify, Shopify has a rate limit I need to deal with. How I normally handle this is a background job system. I'd set up Google Cloud Tasks or Amazon SQS. Gadget has this built in just to our API. It's actually very simple. We can go API on queue to spin up a new background. We call them background actions. We're going to go ahead and run this write to Shopify action. We haven't created this yet, but we will in a minute. We're passing in some parameters, and then there's some options here to control my background action concurrency in this case. So this will help me deal with Shopify's rate limit. So this is kind of nice. It's kind of easy. Instead of going ahead and setting up a Cloud Task project, it's built into Gadget. API.enqueue is powered by Temporal. Let's go ahead and create write to Shopify, and then we can actually write back to Shopify. Now this, in this case, because you'll notice it's API.write to Shopify. There's no Shopify product in there. That means I created a global action. So if I just create an action in this actions folder, write to Shopify, there we go. I need to go ahead and implement my actual background action here. So once again, I'm just going to copy paste code. I'm going to start at the bottom of this one. So you'll notice a global action. If I just go back here, by default, our API endpoint, there are no parameters. I need to go ahead and define parameters for this action. And that's what I've done down here. So I've got a shop ID, it's a string, product ID, it's a string, and then an array of strings for my tags. And you see that as I make edits, my sample off to the side here also updates. So, if I were to change product ID to a number, all of a sudden we get 1, 2, 3. Nice. Now let's go to my actual implementation here. This is my run function. I'm actually going to go back a little bit and talk about the difference between run and on success. I didn't cover that before, but I should. But let's focus on the implementation here first. So I'm checking my params. You see they are going to be fully typed now because I've supplied this params definition. We're checking to see if we have a shop ID and a product ID. If not, we're throwing an error. And then we're getting our authenticated Shopify API clients. We're going connections.shopify.forShopID. It's getting us the client here. So it is an authenticated client that is ready to write back to the store. And if I actually check, remember this is serverless node. So if I have a package JSON file, it's just Shopify API node. We're just wrapping that up. While I'm here in the package JSON file, you can add whatever packages you're used to using. Once again, it is just node. So if you want to import Lodash to do something, you can go ahead and do so. Let's go back to our write to Shopify action. We're just using this API client to go ahead, shopify.graphql, send this mutation for this product, update the tags, and we're good. Now, what's nice about this being a background action is that retries will already be built in. So when I call this action with api.enqueue, when it's run, it's going to be added to this queues tab. And if there's a failure here, it will automatically retry up to a set number of times. And if not, actions that have determined to be failed after retries will be visible in this queues tab with any stack trace information, so you go ahead and debug. So for example, if I have an error in my utils function, my apply tags function, and I'm missing a product ID and I keep throwing this error, I'm gonna go ahead and see that in my logs. Okay, so that's my backend. That's pretty groovy. I did mention that I just wanna flip back to my create action. So I added my custom code to this on success function. On success and run exist in our actions, but they have different purposes. Run is transactional, which means any failures in my run function will roll back everything that has occurred there. So for example, if I am saving something to the database, then I throw an error, that save will be rolled back. It won't be persisted to my gadget database. The reason I'm adding my custom code to my on success function is because I'm writing to Shopify. So if I write to Shopify and then something fails, I can't roll back that write. So on success is good for longer running side effects, any sort of writes out. I want to put my code in on success. So we've got a lot more information on the differences between run and on success in our docs, but I just want to quickly call that out. Okay, perfect. The last thing to do now is build my front end. So let's go back to our web folder. We've got our app index file. I'm just going to copy paste some code once again. Now, because Gadget knows, there we go, paste it in. Because Gadget knows the shape of my APIs and my data models, we can just use these auto components, it's auto form and auto table, to quickly build front end. So in my case, I just need a form for merchants to enter these keywords, and I want a table to display entered keywords. So if I go back to my app here in my admin, it'll load up, and you see I've got a form and a table and an error. This is a happy error though. It's permission denied. So when I created my allowed tag model, remember, Gadget created my CRUD API, but it didn't give merchants access to that API or permission. So if I go to my access control permissions, I can go ahead, grant the Shopify app users role, which is merchants in the admin. I can grant them access to read, create, and delete. And then if I go ahead and refresh this, I shouldn't see that error. In fact, I should see my sweater tag. Very nice, cozy is there. And I can go ahead and enter keywords now. And if I go back to my front end code just quickly, I've got my auto form. When it's submitted, it's gonna call my create action. And then I'm just tossing a title on there. So this will just create tags for me. I've got my auto table. It's for my allowed tag model. It's automatically going to be hooked up to my delete action. And I'm just showing my keyword column. So if I go sweater or warm, it's going to go ahead, add these keywords. Let's get rid of sweater. See, delete works. Run that, delete completed. Very cool. Let's just go check that in Gadget. I see warm, sweater has been deleted. That's a very speedy way for me to build my front ends. So that's kind of my app. I'm ready to test this out now. So remember, I deleted my product data. I'm going to run a data sync, which will include that sweater, and I should get a tag. So if I go to my installs, see, this is my development store. Hasn't been synced yet. I'm going to go ahead and run my historical data sync to pull in all of my product data into Gadget. There we go. It was completed. It's pretty speedy. I will also note that there is a sync API. So it's very common when a merchant installs your app, you're going to want to sync right away. So you've got your Shopify shop model. There's an install action. You can just go ahead, run a sync right away. If I take a peek at my product data, cool. It's all here. That's looking good. I do see a cozy tag, so it looks like my app worked. If I go and check out my product in Shopify, click on my sweater, see it's now tagged with cozy because that is a word in my product description and one of my entered keywords. So that's great. My app is working. Just to kind of complete the loop here, if I check my logs, remember we have those logger statements. We can go ahead and see we've got a bunch of empty keywords to apply. These are all my written log statements. I can actually just filter by my events. But I do have one with cozy, and then I'm applying that final tag to this product. So that's great. I know my app is working. I'm ready to deploy to production. This is the last step. And remember, I already set up my production app in my dev dashboard. In fact, something I haven't clicked on yet is our environment. So right now I'm working in my development environment. You can create as many development environments as you want. It's useful if you're working on a team for every team member to have their own development environment, which also requires your own Shopify app. Our docs have more details on that though. I also have a production environment. So I can see I need to go ahead and deploy to get started. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's click deploy. Can deploy my changes to production. This is going to go ahead. It's going to run all the necessary database migrations. It's going to minify my front end, update my actions, and restart my app for me. And once that is finished, I'll have a production app that's ready to be installed on a store. You'll notice if I do go to my production environment settings, if I just go to plugins, Shopify, it is already connected to that production app in my dev dashboard. So I just want to highlight that quickly. So here we go. It is deploying. We'll just let it do its thing. Once this is finished, I will have an app that I can install on a store if I want. Now, Shopify app deploy, the command it's running, this will help if you do have any Shopify extensions. My app doesn't, but it will deploy your extensions automatically as well. My app is being restarted. That's good. If I go to production, go to my files now. So you see, I do have all of my models here. I can look at my production data. I can't edit. You notice it's disabled. I can't edit any of my production models or code. This is just read only right now. But it does allow me to see what is in production currently. Now, if I wanted to go ahead and install my app on a store, I could go to my dev dashboard, go through selecting the custom distribution and install on a store, and I am all good. So that was a quick run through of building a full stack Shopify app on Gadget. You notice we didn't have to do any infrastructure work when we deployed to production or set up our development environment. Everything is automatically stitched together and powered by auto-generated APIs, including that background job system, which is really handy. Makes development much quicker. If you have any questions about building on Gadget, there's a lot more to go through. Check out our documentation or ask us in our developer Discord. Until next time, I hope you keep building more and coding less with Gadget.